Hey, what's up, everybody? Chris here. I wanted to address a topic today that has to do with The Mandalorian, my favorite Star Wars TV show. Yes, I like it even more than Andor, which is fantastic. There's just something about The Mandalorian that I think really kind of nails what I love about Star Wars personally. Just the characters, the vibe, the music, just everything about it. Kind of that space western thing. They really do that well. But in recent weeks, there's been a lot of conversation around sort of this perception that people have that maybe The Mandalorian has sort of lost its way. It's lost steam. In other words, this is not the way, based on what people are sort of talking about, what the discourse is in regards to this show right now. There was an episode that came out this morning. I'm recording this April 12th, chapter 23, The Spies. Fantastic episode, probably the best episode of the season. But I gotta say, I don't really fully buy into this whole idea that it's lost, right? And I can kind of get where people are coming from in the sense that, yes, some of the stuff we've gotten with season 3 has felt like filler so far. It's kind of taken a little while to gain traction, but it's all been highly entertaining. And, that's not to give the sort of parts of the show that have been a little bit down, right, compared to what it did with the highs of the first two seasons. It's not to forgive that. But I think it's good to put it in perspective and just remember we're kind of in this golden era of Star Wars stuff. If you're a Star Wars fan and you're my age, I'm 41 years old, you can remember when we had the original trilogy and there was this big gap before we got to the prequel trilogy, right? And that would have been, I guess, my senior year of high school when episode 1 came out. Then we sort of get into that. But then there's another big gap before we get the sequels. I would have never have dreamed as someone in high school that we would have had multiple Star Wars TV shows, that we would have had multiple movies over the years, things like Rogue One and Solo and all of that. So, I think it's easy to get, sort of lost in the grand scheme of things. But I think Mandalorian overall as a show has done a lot of things really well. This most recent episode, I think, does a fantastic job of kind of bringing everything back together, right? The story now has suddenly got all kinds of traction. I'm not going to spoil what happens in The Spies, this most recent chapter that we've got in front of us, but absolutely go watch it. I think if you've kind of been turned off to The Mandalorian just because of how some of the episodes have played out this season, I would strongly encourage you to kind of push through. Maybe get to that episode, see if you still hold that opinion after getting through it. But again, even with the episodes that were a little bit more kind of slower paced, the ones set on Coruscant, for example, where they're developing side stories with different characters that do come to fruition, not to get too spoilery, I would say, but do come to fruition in this most recent episode or come back together, they're there for a reason. You just have to kind of trust that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni know what they're doing because they have treated this franchise with the respect that as Star Wars fans we want to see and know that it deserves. They've done a great job with it. So far for me, the low point with Star Wars TV shows has been the Book of Boba Fett. Really, with that motorcycle gang that was included there, that was pretty terrible, just the way that was executed. But even that, not being the best Star Wars show, was still highly entertaining. There has been so much world building, so much expansion of the characters that we know and love with this. And what I love too is that they're not sort of casting off things like the sequels, the prequels, any of that kind of stuff. Star Wars is a living, breathing universe that they continue to sort of build into, and I love it. I want them to keep doing this. I think The Mandalorian is in a great place. So, no, I do not buy into this narrative that it is bad or that it has sort of lost its way. I know some people were upset recently when it may have been, I don't know, was it Filoni that said this? Somebody said that Din Djarin is no longer the central character of The Mandalorian. I can see where they're going with that, but I also kind of don't fully agree with it, especially with this most recent episode. I think that he continues to be sort of the driving force behind what's going on, especially him and Grogu, that partnership. The central character that we have now of Bo-Katan, who really has sort of taken up this Mandalorian leadership role and is trying to unite things, has put this on a much more epic scale as a show than it was previously. And granted, people can have different feelings about that, right? I mean, it worked really well when it was just about the Mando being a bounty hunter. Now it's about retaking Mandalore and uniting all these Mandalorian factions that exist. So I love where they're headed with this. Again, I think it's off to a great start this season. And I guess really we're much more beyond the beginning of the season. We're kind of midway through it or closer to the end of it, actually, now that I'm saying that out loud. But I think that they're headed in the right direction. I trust the direction they're going in. I love Mando. I love the show. I think it's great. So if you've been, kind of put off by some of the stuff at the start of the season, again, I would say go back to it and check it out. But anyway, let me know what you think about the current state of The Mandalorian. Do you agree with me? Do you think that I'm totally wrong and that it's just not in a great state at the moment? Let me know in the comments down below. And as always, thanks so much for watching.